Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. So as promised, folks, following up after last week's video on building the dump pipes, we're now about to start building the exhaust system, or at least part of it. So as you can see, the cats are sitting in there at the moment, and what I'm doing is I've just sort of been planning out the available space that I have where I'm going to run the exhaust system. You can see that I've got the rusty old tail shaft sitting up in there, which is actually a custom made one-piece tail shaft for this thing, but it was never painted when the car was built originally, so it just looks like a rusty old piece of pipe. I don't want to paint it until it's going in for its final fit up, so excuse the rusty looking old tail shaft. So let's head over to the bench. I've just drawn a bit of a layout of what I've got, and I'll explain to you what I'm about to do. Alrighty, so I've been drawing up a bit of stuff, and no, I haven't just been sitting around drawing boobs, guys. This is the overall size between the transmission tunnel here, which is 250mm. So what I've done, I've got 100mm circles in there. They represent the outside of the resonators that I'll be running through that section. So it's going to be a 3-inch pipe, you know, like a 3-inch resonator with a 4-inch body. And I'm going to fit the biggest, longest resonators that I can in there, because, you know, I hate rain, and it's always a good thing just to, you know, fit the biggest resonators that you can. For me personally, a lot of people might not like it, but I do. So you can see I've just mapped out the sizes. I've worked out the center lines of the pipes, you know, the distance that they will be on the side, clearance through the center, and all that sort of thing. So that's my layout that I've got to work with. So now after doing that, what I really need to do now is build an X pipe. Now, I've built X pipes before on my YouTube channel. I will put a link right there to a more in-depth X pipe build where I go into explaining a bit more of the sort of theory behind it. But for now, let's head over to the bandsaw, and I'll just whiz you over what I'm about to do and how I'm about to start knocking out this X pipe. So what I've got here, folks, is a 45-degree mandrel bend. And you can see this line that I've got drawn on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off on my bandsaw here. So you can see that I've got a fence set up along the side of the bandsaw there, just so that I get a nice sort of straight even cut. And I've put a bimetal blade in my bandsaw here. And I've talked about my bandsaw before. This is just a real El Cheapo home sort of hobby bandsaw that I've modified. It has a treadmill motor on it with variable speed, and I made this head for it so it runs proper bearings and stuff. So it cost almost nothing to build. The bandsaw unit itself, I think I paid 20 or 30 bucks for it because it came without the head. So what I'm getting at, folks, is that you can set your workshops up at home for very little money if you're on a budget, without really need to invest mega bucks, particularly if you're sort of starting out doing a bit of your own fabrication on your own vehicles and stuff like that. And honestly, I've got no need to spend more money on something like this that I use here at home. Obviously, if I was you know, back in the shop doing more fabrication and stuff, I'd have more of a professional unit. But this is compact, and as you'd be aware, there's not a huge amount of space in the Aussie shed, so it's mounted on like a 4-wheel drive pull-out fridge tray, so all these tools just slide back into the shelving when I'm finished using them, just to try and maximise the space here in the shed. So yeah, with X pipes, a lot of people use the 1/3 rule. They go 1/3 the diameter of the pipe and sort of come in. I tend to go a little bit less, just because 1/3 tends to almost line the pipes up in the X. So I think I've gone about 15mm here, just off the side, and you'd be surprised how big a hole 15mm parallel off that edge will make in the piece, and how crossed over everything will be just with that small amount. So I'll get the bandsaw running, guys, and I'll just chop through this, and I'll do another one off camera, and we'll put them together, and I'll give you a bit of a look at them, eh? So sit back and enjoy a bit of bandsaw fun. So there we go, folks, that's what it looks like. As I mentioned, you can see that's from taking 15mm off the width of the pipe, and as I mentioned, it does make quite a big hole. And this is one that I did earlier. So this is straight off the bandsaw too. I'm yet to clean these up. When I'm finished, I'll run these on the belt sander and properly flatten them off before I go weld them together. But you can see it's, you know, you could basically just weld them up as they are. It's a pretty neat sort of a fit. So what you end up with there is where the pipes line up with each other, you get about half a pipe coverage sort of thing. So the side of this pipe lines up with the center line of the opposing side of the X. For me, that seems to be a really good sort of a solution and gives quite a nice distinctive sort of a sound. And yeah, so next thing to do, folks, like I say, clean it up on the belt sander. Then we'll tack it together and weld her up. So let's throw it on the belt sander, eh? And there's our X-pipe, folks. Turned out pretty reasonable. Pretty happy with that. Not bad for a roughie. So, what we have to do now is we've got to, particularly on the back side of the pipe, we've now got to return back to straight. Because we have an angle here of 45 degrees and an angle here of 45, which gives us an effective angle here of 22.5 degrees. So to return straight, we need an angle of 22.5 degrees welded onto this. So what we'll do now, I'll get another 45 and I'll cut it straight down the middle. That'll give me two pieces with an angle of 22.5 right in the center, which will then go onto here, and then we'll end up perfectly straight again. But what we have to do as well, once we get those angles, we then have to work out our center line, which I think was about 118 millimeters. So I reckon we're going to be, oh gee, probably only 20 mil away from where those two pipes are welded together with our turned in pieces, and then we have to go straight again. So we'll get this cut, and then we can lay it over the top of the X pipe, measure it, and work out how far back we have to cut it to get our straight pipes to the right width to fit in the transmission tunnel as we come back. So I'll go and cut this, and I'll be back. So hands up if you're ready for the magic, folks. So here's our 45, and that ain't the magic. The magic's coming. Dun dun dun! Look at that. Oh, stay there. You're spoiling me magic trick. But you get the idea, folks. If you work with known angles and you're able to split angles and all that sort of stuff, you won't get lost, and that can be the big problem when you're doing pipe work, is getting lost with all your angles. You know, like, you always come back from that, but it's just a time consuming process. Whereas if you can stay focused on all your angles, if you're trying to negotiate your way around something where you have a little bit of space to play with, obviously in really tight areas you're kind of just stuck with, you know, cutting whatever angle you can get away with to sort of make the bend. But in places where you're just kind of working something through, this is what you can do, folks. And as you can see, looking at that, we've got an X pipe that leads into two straight pipes that's going to come down through the transmission tunnel at the back and go into our resonators and all that sort of stuff. So all we need to do now, folks, to get our width across here that we've got on our piece of paper that I showed you before, is to just move further up the X pipe. The further we move up, the narrower the pipes get together. Alrighty. So I will just work that out, cut them off, and I'll bring you back. And that appears to be about what we need, folks, right there. Works with the measurement, everything's fantastic. I'll get it back to the bench, I'll tack it together, weld it up, give you another look at it. There it is, folks, all welded up now, looking sort of quite reasonable. So this piece is, well, it's probably 2/3 of the way sort of completed, you know. Obviously these straight sections are now going to have to be cut to length where they join onto the resonators. Once I get the resonators and work out how much room I need, I will probably trim these back. And then this end up here, it will be, it's got to work its way into the catalytic converters via a flex join. So there'll be some bends, and there's also a bit of a height change where we come out of the back of the gearbox. We've got to step up a little bit to get the clearance that we need underneath the car. So of course every bit of progress is, you know, is progress. So let's get into those things, eh? So we're all trimmed off to length now, folks. It's looking pretty good, and I have some other components here, and I'm about to continue on with this and start building the midsection of the exhaust system. I've got the resonators in a box next to the bench. I'll drag the resonators out and I'll sort of show you how this is going to start going together. Sorry folks, I just had to frig around with the lighting a bit. These are sort of pretty tall, and my light over the workbench there was kind of shining into the camera and just, it was just creating all sorts of problem. But they're the resonators. And where are we? That's how we sort of go up there. They've got a slip joint, flange joint sort of thing on them there. I'm actually going to cut that right back, so there's only about 5mm. So I don't really need all this excess, you know, with this sort of the way the joints going together. And I'm also trying to keep the whole thing as compact as possible, because there's not a lot of length to the transmission tunnel area, and I've got a lot of stuff I want to kind of squash in there. So trimming absolutely everything down as much as I can is what I'm having to do. I have flex joints for the top here too. They go on just behind the transmission cross member where it comes out of the cats and sort of snakes around and up sort of into these, just so there's able to be a little bit of give in the exhaust system, so there's no chance of anything cracking or, you know, any issues with vibration and stuff that a flex joint can sort of help take out. So obviously there'll be one of those on each side. And when we get to the bottom down here, you can see I've got some V-bands and some cones and stuff. So what I'm doing, I'm once I get to the back of these resonators, I'm putting these cones on, which are 3" to 2.5", and I'm stepping down, and then I'm using a V-band, and then I'm dropping down to 2.5" tailpipes. So it'll be 3" system all the way back to the tailpipes. Tailpipes are mufflers, which are going to be between 2.5. So yeah, folks, it's come along quite well. I'm pretty happy with how it's all sort of looking and everything. So I've got these resonators cut down. I'll cut this slip joint off on both ends, again, so that I can keep it as compact as possible. And I'll TIG them onto these pipes, and we'll come back for another look, eh? And that's how it's shaping up so far, folks. So our X pipe is now becoming our mid pipe section. It's all looking rather nice. As you see, I've cut that extra flange material off the resonators. Got our flex joints welded on. This will actually encompass the cats as it sort of progresses up, sort of in the top area there. And the bottom, I think, will get a reducer and a V-band flange, possibly a bend as well before or after that point. But I'll carry on, folks. I've got to do a little bit more work on the cats with the pipes that come back after the cats. There's sort of a very slight corkscrew that comes from the back of the cats into this flex pipe up here that's going to take a little bit of work to get it just right. So I'll go and get stuck into that, folks. And again, I'll turn the camera back on when it's done, and we'll have a bit more of a look at that. And hopefully I might be able to put it into position for a bit of a glory shot. Alright, see you in a bit. Alrighty, I'm back, folks. And there it is. That's our mid-pipe section. Pretty much finished. So I might throw it on the car, and fingers crossed it'll fit. Okay. So all in all, folks, I think that turned out pretty reasonable. I'll just give you a quick squiz at my quick release V-band clamps, and I'll show you why I love them so much. So quick release V-band clamps, folks, no gaskets. Obviously they have a locking nut. I've just got this this bolt and nut in here just because I'm assembling and disassembling, and I didn't want to kind of flog out the lock nut, you know, because they do tend to get a bit sloppy over time. So all you do with them is you just loosen them off, and then you can flip that off like that, and there you go. You can just basically pull it out then. No gaskets, just as easy to reassemble it. Squeeze it back together, put your clip on, do it up. Mate, you can't beat them in my opinion. It's been quite a while before I've used any sort of standard exhaust flanges and gaskets, just because in my opinion they're so inferior to the V-band flange. So there you go, today's hot tip from the Aussie shed, V-band flanges. So I'm a little bit unsure at this stage, folks, whether I'm going to continue on with the tailpipe and mufflers on the back of the exhaust system in next week's video, just because I don't have the mufflers that I'm after yet. I'm after a specific configuration of muffler and stuff, and I haven't been able to find exactly what I want at this stage, and I don't want to kind of compromise by get something I'm not going to be sort of happy with. So the search continues. So possibly I'll be moving on to something else next week. Might be intercooler piping. Yeah, we'll see. So anyway, folks, I hope you like the mid-pipe build and how the whole exhaust system's going. And if you like the video, remember to give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to the Aussie Shed if you're enjoying my videos, and click the bell so you get notifications of any new stuff that comes out. And as always, folks, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.